I'm coming to you today with another fantastic Bible story. It's taken from chapter 29 in the book of Genesis. This is Hadasha the Shulamite, and I promised you that I will be bringing to you stories every week, stories that are not common, but yet they are Bible stories. They are true stories that occurred many, many years ago. And today we're going to talk about Jacob, his two wives. One was tender-eyed, and his two surrogate moms. Now, Jacob had run away from home because his brother was angry with him, and his mother advised him to go and stay with his uncle until his brother calmed down because he was upset. He had stolen his birthright, and that was very important. Their father Isaac had loved Esau because Esau was a hunter and Jacob was a child that stayed around the house and, helped his mom and whatnot. Anyway, that will come in another story. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. It's one of those stories that you sit at the edge of your seat when you really get to the real depth of this whole story. This is just a part of the story where we're going to talk about his wives and his children, how they came to be. So he had gotten there to Paran, and the first person he saw in the family was Rachel. He had met her when she went to water the sheep because that's where he was resting, and he introduced himself to her, and he told her who he was. The Bible says he kissed her, he greeted her, and she ran home and she told her father, guess what? Your nephew, Jacob, is at the well. He said he's your sister's son. And he went out there to meet him. And they met and he explained himself, and I guess it was confirmed, yeah, this is my sister's son. And he invited him back to the house. I guess they had dinner and they probably roasted a whole sheep or calf or whatever, and they had a good time. Now, after Jacob had stayed there with them for about a month, Laban, his uncle, said to him, you're my brother. That's how they spoke. And it's not fair for you to work without any wages. What would you want me to pay you? So he said, this is what we do. I'll work for you for 7 years, and you give me your daughter Rachel to be my wife. Now, it was common back in those days to marry your half-sister, your half-brother. You married into the family, like the royal family, And he said, okay. So Jacob worked for those 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years, he went to Laban and he said, I guess he called him Uncle Laban, or we don't know what he called him. But he went to him and he said, well, my 7 years is up. Probably went to him at midnight, at the stroke of midnight the next day. Because the Bible said the 7 years seemed like days for the love that he had for Rachel. Now, like I said, Rachel had a sister as well who had a tender eye. Her eye was, we call it the sleepy eye, but there was something wrong with her eye. I don't know if it was one or both of them. I think it was one because he said eyed, so it was one. And he said, okay, and called and he had the party and everything. And at a certain point, Jacob would go in to his wife to consummate the marriage. I guess there was a special room, a bedroom back then, they said chamber. And so at a certain point, after the party, I would assume, he went in to his wife and they consummated the marriage. And next morning he got up, and I'm thinking, he was like, oh, finally, I got my wife. What a wonderful night I had with my wife. Oh, I'm so happy. And when he turned, guess what? It was Leah that was staring at him with her tender-eyed. Oh my goodness, I just can't imagine how flabbergasted he was. After 7 years, this is what he did to me. Give me this woman who I never give a second look to. I have no desire for her. I guess that's what he's thinking. I don't know if he went off and said those things. I hope he didn't. Maybe he did. We don't know. So he went out there to his uncle and he said, how could you do this to me? I give you 7 years of my life. How could you betray me like this? I give you 7 years, 7 years for Rachel. I worked overtime. I did extra. Thinking that's what he meant to have said. For this woman that I love, and this is what you've done to me. This is not fair. So I guess his uncle said, okay, calm down, calm down. You know how it is done. The younger is never married before the older. Now, you work complete the week, which there was some type of way they had done things. And after the week, I'll give you Rachel as well. And you work another 7 years for me, and everything would be okay. So I guess he had no choice. And he worked another 7 years. But of course, he had Rachel before the 7 years expired. After the first week, he had Rachel. And, the damage was done. He stayed with both of his wives. And after a while, Leah, the tender-eyed bride, she started having children. She had a son. She had one son. She had 2 sons. She had 3 sons. She had 4 sons. And poor Rachel was not having any children. Oh, and she was devastated. So every time Leah would have a son, she would declare that, oh, my husband is going to love me now because I'm giving him these children. Apparently that did not happen, because after each child, she would say the same thing. And so after the 4th child, she kind of eased up having children. In the meantime, Rachel is beside herself. So she went to her husband and she said, give me children or I'm going to die. He said, am I God that you asked me to do that? What can I do? And so Rachel went and she prayed and she cried before God, and she may have fasted or whatever. And guess what? She became pregnant, and she had her first son, and she named him Joseph. Of course, I'm pretty sure that both of them were on top of the world, because the woman that he loved finally was able to give him a son. So, of course, Leah had to look at that, and she decided, I am going to have more children. So before that, I missed something. Before Rachel had her first son, she had gotten her maid to have a child by her husband. So that would be technically her child. Back in those days, it was the way things were done. It was never, because remember, Abraham and Sarah, his wife, Abraham's wife Sarah had given Abraham her maid, Hagar, to have a child because she thought that's what she had to do. Anyway, getting back to Jacob and Leah and Rachel, they did the same thing. So Leah did this, she gave Jacob her maid to have children, because this is a competition now. So, and especially after Rachel had her child, and then she knew, oh, it's over for me. So I better have some more children. So one day, Rachel was hungry. And Leah, apparently she was cooking. And she said, give me some of that food. I am so hungry. And tonight, you can sleep with Jacob. You can have him tonight. So she said, okay. And she ate. And before Jacob could get home from the field, she ran out to meet him, Leah did, and said, I paid for you. I'm going to say the way, I think she may have said it. I paid for your services, so tonight you have to sleep with me. You have to come to my room, because your wife, Rachel, that you love so dearly, she gave me food. I was able to purchase you for a plate of food. And guess what? She got pregnant. She had another son. In the meantime, Rachel is over here with her son and her maid. So she kept giving her maid to Jacob, and he had children, and both of them back and forth. And Leah, the tender-eyed bride, she had 6 children, 6 sons and 1 daughter. Now, after a while, Jacob decided, I'm having all of these children and my wives. It's time for me to go on my own. So he went to his uncle Laban and he said, look, I think it's time for me to go, and have my own. I have a large family and I need to set up my own system and my own property and, that sort of thing. So Laban, he said, I don't want you to leave. Why don't you tell me what you want? And I will do it. Because ever since you've been here, my cattle, my wealth has increased so much. Because he knew that God was with Jacob. God had blessed him because of Jacob. And that's another thing. Our very presence, if we are faithful, if we do God's will, if we live according to the word, God will bless us and he will bless the people around us. I'm praying to get to that point where my very presence will be a blessing to people, to others. So the plan was that he was going to maybe pay him higher wages if he would stay. But Jacob said, I don't want to stay. I don't want you to pay me anymore. But I have an idea. This is what we do. Give me all the spotted animals, the cattle, the sheep and the cows and the goats and things like that. And that would be my wages. So it's safe to assume that the spotted animals weren't as many as the solid colored animals, the goats and cows and the camels and what have you. So he agreed, okay, we can do that. And that's what he did. So in the meantime, Jacob had a vision that God showed him these speckled animals jumping, over the water, over the trough. And Jacob, in his wisdom, what he did was, he did a scientific thing with sticks, and he put white colors of spotted paint on the stick, so that when the female cows or sheep or goats would go to drink water, they would see this, and somehow it affected them to the point that they would bear young ones that had these speckled colors. And after a while, his cattle outnumbered his uncle's. Now we know that's going to be a problem. And Laban, his uncle's son, saw that, and they said to their dad, Jacob is stealing from us, How come he has more cattle than we do? And, this was a problem. And Jacob too, when he realized what was going on, he called his wife and he called them into the field. I guess they needed some privacy. And he told them, look, this is what is happening. Your dad is not treating me the way he used to. I could tell there is a difference in the way he is with me. I want us to leave. Let's leave. And they agreed because they saw what their father was doing. He had changed his wages 10 times. I guess he kept maybe either adding more work or making his salary less, because Laban was obviously a greedy person. And so they decided to leave. Now, when they left, he didn't tell Laban that he was leaving. And when you think that they had left 3 days before Laban realized that Jacob had gone with his family and all his cattle. 3 days. And this is 14 years. So after 14 years, we're probably talking about thousands of sheep and goats and all that kind of stuff. And Jacob and his family left. Now, Laban was not happy. He was not happy. And he decided to go after him. And somewhere along the way, he had a vision, and God told him, you don't do anything to Jacob. Don't speak mean to him, and you don't touch him. God warned him. And he was sensible enough to know that if God tells you not to do something to one of his children, you had better not. So as the story unfolds, he did meet up with Jacob, and they made an agreement that they would not come together again, that Jacob would go on and with his family, and Laban will go back with his family. And he kissed his children, his 2 daughters and his grandchildren, and he went back home. Jacob had to face his brother. Next time, we will talk about meeting his brother Esau for the first time after over 14 years. By then, we hope that Esau's anger was kindled and that they can be together as a family. Jacob would be able to see his father and his mother and all that. God bless you. Please remember to share, like, and subscribe so that many others, your friends and family, would be able to listen to these stories, and also that it will inspire you to read your Bible. It's a wonderful book. There are so many stories. I get so excited because I cannot decide which one to bring to you. But I tell you, the next one is going to be very, very exciting. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And remember to read your Bible and pray every day. And most of all, Jesus is coming, and he's coming soon, because we are in the book of Revelation. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.